Hey, Jarret.
Hey, Rach, how are you?
I'm great. I'm super excited to be here today. Hey, last episode we talked about commercial cheating services. What do you want to talk about this time?
Well, as it's so cold out today, negative 23 degrees Celsius, actually, I want to talk about cookies, but probably not the cookies that you're thinking about.
Oh man, cookies warm from the oven sounds delicious, but I think you're going to be talking about cookies in our computers.
Yes.
Well, I'm excited to have that conversation. I'm Rachael Shoenig. I am an attorney and CEO at Cornerstone Strategies.
And I'm Jarret Dyer, Vice President at Surpass and Director at College of DuPage. Welcome, everyone, to episode 3 of And This Matters Because, our podcast where we talk about testing, test security, and why you should care.
And in addition to cookies, we are going to talk with Claire McCauley from Cambridge University, and we're going to talk about Conference on Test Security, which we also talk about as COTS. So this is our Cookies, COTS, and Claire episode. And now for our legal disclaimer. Nothing in this podcast is legal advice, nor are we establishing an attorney-client relationship. Okay, Jarret. So you mentioned wanting to talk about cookies, but not the warm, gooey chocolate chip cookies that come out of the oven, but instead computer cookies, which nobody's going to be eating, but we are going to learn a little bit about. So tell me what you mean when you're talking about a computer cookie. Let's just explain what you mean by that.
Sure. Cookie is a little packet of information that helps kind of identify you on the web for the easiest part. It helps either with login information or shopping carts. They can be very, very helpful when you're revisiting a website. They can also be, of concern for some people as they do track your activity online.
Yeah. Okay. So I think you mentioned when we were getting ready for this, you're like, they're like the golden ticket because of the packet of, information that they record about you. And I
Mhm,
think usually we are given opportunities to accept or reject certain types of
mhm,
cookies.
mhm.
Why might someone want to accept or reject cookies?
Well, it really depends on the website, and it depends when that notification comes up, right? Accept all, or select some, or reject. It depends on if that is a website that you want tracking your information, because they can be following your activity. It helps with your activity online, but it can also kind of feel the sense that they're following you, and all of a sudden, what you're looking at shows up in an ad about 5 minutes later.
Right. And I think there's cybersecurity concerns with cookies as well if you have inadvertently had some malware placed on your machine, right?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that was kind of like a predecessor to our conversation, concerns that there's malware on potentially could be on your machine when you log into an important website, for example, like a broker website or
Bank
your
account.
banking
Yeah,
information. You
I can totally
could,
see that.
in essence, be sharing that login information with a bad actor.
Okay. So, and how would they use that? Right. So now they've got this cookie information. What would they be doing with that?
So potentially, if the session is still open, they could log in to your account without you being aware of it. So one of the things we're going to talk about, excuse me, just good old online security. Make sure you're logging in, and then you're also logging out of any sensitive websites.
Okay. So let's go next step and say, how does this tie into cheating?
Yeah, I do, and I want to, say thank you to a friend of the podcast who brought this to our attention. This is kind of like an old school, now new school type of cheating. It's very similar to a form of proxy testing, which we've talked about on the podcast before, where you can have two individuals. Typically, this is kind of in the higher ed space. Two individuals working together to cheat on a test.
Yeah. So this would be like if I'm the student, I'm showing up in the classroom to take the test, and Jarret, you're my proxy. You're
Mhm,
outside of the test in your dorm room still.
mhm.
And while it looks like I'm entering the answers, you're actually the person responsible for responding to test questions and entering answers on my test. So that's what we think of. Sometimes we call that a virtual proxy. So instead of actually sending you in my place to physically take the test. You're virtually taking the test for me.
Yeah, 100%. And so where the cookies come in, the cookies themselves, there's a lot of really rich information in a cookie, but it's in a text file, right? So it can be copied and shared, and then allows the individual could even be in a classroom or in a testing center, in the test, even with a lockdown browser engaged. And because of the way that the cookies work, they could be shared with somebody else. That person can also be in the test. And it's kind of like a race to the finish, Rachel. Whoever clicks submit first, but is the last person to enter that last question, kind of wins the prize.
Okay.
They get the answers in.
Yeah. So I just want to kind of say this back. So I would have to give you access to that cookie information. And then using that, you would be able to come in while I'm also in the exam and answer exam questions for me. And
Yes,
then
absolutely.
assuming that you're the one who actually knows the test content, because why else would I have done this? Then you're going to be the one to decide, to hit submit. Did I say that right?
Yep. Yeah, 100%. So I
Okay.
can look like I'm taking the test, and the proctor can be walking around, and I can be answering questions. And as long as I've timed it with my proxy, that, I would stop and say 8:05, and they hit their answer at 8:06. The answers that they had on their screen would be submitted through.
So the proxy answer, even if the student in the classroom responds, is the proxy answer after that gets recorded.
Yep, 100%.
Okay.
And
Now
subs that.
browsers.
Mhm,
And I know a lot of LMSs use lockdown browsers.
mhm.
So can those prevent this?
Lockdown browsers are amazing. The important thing to remember is that they're locking down that physical computer. So if the cookie information has been shared, the lockdown browser is doing exactly what it's supposed to on both computers. It's locking that computer down, but it won't prevent that authentication piece. So once the proxy is authenticated, they can lock their computer down. Once it's done, that packet of information will be uploaded to the LMS, and those grades would be recorded.
Okay. So what can we do about that?
Yeah, actually kind of cool because we've been testing this, um, to see what can actually be done about it. And a couple of things that we noticed. One, good, the same as we mentioned with the banking situation, requiring that students log in and that students log out, to terminate any of those sessions. Because as soon as the student in the testing center logs out, that session gets terminated on the proxy tester screen. And
Mm.
also, we noticed, after a bit of trial and error, that the actual student, if the proxy submits for them, their submit button kind of gets grayed out because it's already been done, and they don't get a test complete or test upload window. So we've been, advising faculty and other proctors to make sure that the student stops at that screen and shows them that the submission has been completed.
Okay. So active proctoring, understanding, where the student is at in the exam, watching the test taker's behavior, seeing that aligns with what is happening actually on their screen.
Mhm,
And then looking at that submit button. Those sound like really
mhm.
doable things. I think, we call this, and this matters because, I think this has both cyber security awareness as well as exam security awareness implications.
It does, and I'm going to go one step farther.
Yeah.
And thanks to our friend of the podcast, who was like, you know what? This could also be used if I leave my faculty portal open in the LMS. And if a student were to come up and do a presentation at the bunker and I didn't log out or did something else, they could actually get into my account and change their own grade using the same type of attack.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that goes back to what you were saying. Make sure you're
Mhm.
logging in, logging out, ending sessions so that those cookies are terminated and no longer active and able to provide access once that particular session is done. So I think that's a good public service announcement right there. I think active proctoring is always important, but good cybersecurity practices are also obviously really important as to this particular hack. So thank you, Jerry.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would rather have warm cookies than these computer cookies you're talking about, but
Me too.
still
Especially, I
good.
told you, I missed all my cookies this Christmas, past Christmas, as I got COVID, fell asleep for 48 hours, and didn't make any of the cookies in our house. Fortunately, they left me some. So I'm
Oh,
glad we're
good.
talking about them again. All right. Next, when we come back, we're going to be talking with Claire from Cambridge Assessments and the Conference on Test Security. We'll be back in just a moment with this episode of And It Matters Because.
The Conference on Test Security. Join in person November 3rd to 5th, 2026 at Cambridge University in the United Kingdom, or watch virtually November 17th to 19th. Join experts from all types of organizations as they discuss the test security capabilities and enhancements that protect the validity of test results and brand integrity. Call for proposals is open until May 16th, 2026. Visit conferenceontestsecurity.org for more details.
Well, welcome back, everyone. We're excited to be joined now with our good friend Claire from Cambridge Assessments. Claire, we're excited to have you on And It Matters Because podcast. So you're with Cambridge Assessments. Can you tell us a little bit about Cambridge?
Sure. We're based in the UK, but we operate globally. So Cambridge Assessment runs a whole bunch of different assessments. And the area I work in is English language testing. And we've got a range of different products for different uses, but we operate in, I think it's over 130 something countries globally. And we offer products for lots of different age ranges and different uses. And some of that is offered in centre. And some of it is still offered paper-based. We have customers that like paper-based tests. And a lot of it is offered digitally. And again, that's in centre, or in some cases, you can take the test remotely. It varies by product. So a whole bunch of English language testing. We are, I think, one of the biggest English language testing organizations globally.
Oh, really interesting. So specifically, what's your role and how does it touch with exam security?
Sure. My role is Director of Exam Services. So a part of that is managing the security of the exams. And that's looking at, so I've got teams of people that look at, well, how would people cheat on an exam? How do we build in security at every stage? And how do we make sure that we can deter it where possible, detect it when it happens, and have a good response in place when it happens? So that exam security is, I mean, I think it's a really fascinating area, but that is, a key part of my role is looking at across all these different jurisdictions, different countries, different modalities, different tests. How would somebody cheat and what is the proportionate response we can put in place? And a lot of these products are also regulated by our UK regulator, Ofqual. So I'm looking at delivering those tests securely, but also in line with our regulatory requirements.
Hey, Claire, for our US listeners, off-qual is probably something that they're not particularly familiar with. Can you describe that relationship and the role of off-qual a little bit?
Sure. So it's part of the government. So they're a regulator that sets standards, and our products have to meet those standards to continue getting that recognition. It's like a really good quality standard. And of course, set a range of general conditions that all products have to meet to do with the quality of how they're delivered, how they're marked, how they're produced. And they look at all of our products, and it doesn't matter where in the world we're delivering them, those products are recognized by Ofqual and have to meet those standards. So they set a really good, I'm going to use the word standard again, they set a really good standard. And we put a lot of work into making sure that our products meet those requirements. So that's Ofqual. It's a bit like, we've got regulators for lots of different things in the UK. And in the US, for example, you'd have regulation of medicines and things like that, where they set standards and people have to meet them. So this is the education equivalent of those regulators.
Yeah, it almost reminds me of kind of an accrediting body. It's just that's a governmental accrediting body as opposed to, maybe a private accrediting body that we might be a little bit more familiar with in the United States or kind of the North American market. Okay, so you mentioned you have paper pencil and you have digital delivery and you do test center and you do remote. So what do you find the benefit of having that kind of approach is where you've got, different options for different delivery and delivery locations? And what are some of your challenges?
Well, the benefit is really for the people taking the test. So for our test takers, our customers globally, we can offer a range of different solutions, different options. Now, we have some customers that are particularly interested in an in-center model, and that typically would be, say, schools, like your sort of high school market. They're interested in doing it in a test room with a more traditional environment. And then we'll have others, typically exams, say, taken by adults, and they might want to be able to take it from home because the nearest test center might be really far away, or there might not be a test center in their country, for example. So having those different ways of delivering the test gives us that flexibility to offer to test takers. So it's really good customer service.
I think it also for you means that you get every kind of exam security risk there is. So I won't make you mention every risk that's out there, but I would be really interested to hear, given that variety of delivery methods and delivery locations, what are some of your, top concerns? Maybe just your top 3 concerns from an exam security perspective.
Sure. I will say it keeps us very busy because we see lots of attempts
Job
of
security.
cheating. There's lots of things we're always looking at, but one of the key things would be cybersecurity, because more and more we're operating digitally, like many organizations. So we need really, really stringent cybersecurity sort of measures in place to make sure that everything is sort of suitable. We don't want anybody hacking in, but also we want to be sure people can't remote in. There's a whole different range of ways of cheating. And of course, we're also looking at imposters and how we can make sure that ID is verified, and the sort of best way of doing that. And that's different sometimes in center to if you're testing at home, how we make sure we have those measures in place. And I think for me, one of the really important things is really good data and intelligence. Whatever way we're delivering the test, wherever we're delivering it, I want really good information, what we're doing, where, what are we seeing, and joining that up so that we can see patterns, because it's not all about an individual cheating. It's about sometimes groups facilitating that cheating.
Right.
And so we need really good data to join all that information up.
Yeah.
So I'd say, I could write a massive long list of things, but those are a few things that spring to mind.
Well, we just had Mike Clifton was with us in our last episode, and was talking about commercial cheating and some of those group cheating activities, and really how concerning that is for folks who are, responsible for securing exams. So that ties in very well with that.
It is a big concern for us because they're very determined, very experienced, very good at what they do, and they sell it as a service. So they're not just helping an individual, they're helping lots of people. So it's a business, and they have very good business models. And it is a real threat to us because they put a lot of effort into learning how our exams work. So we're always looking at trying to find the data about what they're doing, but also looking at the exams ourselves and saying, well, how would we cheat on them? If we were them, what would we be looking for? So we can find those gaps and plug them ourselves. So you're never finished with exam security. It's a constant, continual, always looking at what the next threat is and what have we missed and what can we do better.
Yeah.
So looking at, we're talking about data then. Looking at the attempts, do you think the attempts to engage in misconduct are increasing? Are they just changing form? What are you kind of seeing on the horizon?
I'd say we do see, probably compared to 10 years ago, there's a more concerted range of people really targeting it as a business and looking at that organized cheating. We see more of that perhaps than we might have done in the past.
As we're looking at plugging those gaps, right? What you say, like red teaming and doing, tabletop exercises and things to kind of look at mitigating strategies. What would you say, or what are your top most important capabilities that you've learned from this that you have in place to address these issues?
Sure. In terms of capabilities, again, it goes back to what I was talking about earlier in terms of data and intelligence. So data science and intelligence gathering is really important. And having people who can interpret that and investigate is really important. But having good relationships with vendors, with our suppliers that provide us with some of the services, whether it's a really good lockdown browser, whether it's really good remote proctoring, whether it's really good ID verification, we have to have really good vendor management and have good confidence in what they're doing, and have regular checks on it. And I'd say, we've brought in quite a lot of expertise in cybersecurity, expertise from law enforcement background, people with a really good range of skills, because test security isn't about having one skill set. We need people from lots of different backgrounds bringing in that, how would you cheat using your great magic cybersecurity skills? What do we need to think about from a law enforcement investigation background? There's a lot of different skills we need to bring into this mix. And so mitigations for me are getting all those right skills in and using them effectively to look at what are those risks, how do we manage them, how do we mitigate them, and how do we make sure we have a continual process of improvement. And think very creatively, because our test takers can be very creative in how they cheat.
I do have to say, one of my pleasures is really have been with your team. Your team is just fantastic. Tell me, COTS and ATP, we'll talk about COTS in a minute, but ATP, the sessions that you guys have hosted have been fabulous, blown my mind. And so thank you for contributing to the industry in the ways that you have. Sorry, go ahead, Rach.
I was just going to say, I think the commercial cheating services has, it's not just that the test takers are persistent, but they're, sort of being encouraged by some of these commercial cheating services who not only say, hey, we can provide you these services, also they're undetectable. And, it's just really interesting to see how that market itself for cheating services has grown and impacted the industry. So yes, speaking of contributing to the industry, Cambridge has been gracious enough to host the conference on test security this year in the UK, which will be the first international conference on test security, or as we call it in the industry, COTS. And Claire, you've been a big part of that. You and I have done a number of sessions together. We have been in a number of different conference webinars and things like that. And your leadership here is so appreciated, as is Cambridge, for hosting the 2026 Conference on Test Security. So tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So first of all, I have to say, COTS is my favorite of all the conferences. It is brilliant. And some of the things I really love about it are that every single session is relevant and interesting. I always learn something new. I get to connect with lots of brilliant people, and everybody there is really passionate. They're really passionate about what they do.
Yes.
And everybody there has really good intentions. We all want to prevent malpractice, prevent cheating for the benefit of all the people who are doing tests honestly. And, some of this is really important. Some cheating can lead to very serious, dangerous stuff.
Yes.
We don't want to go on a plane with a pilot who hasn't learned how to fly properly and things. So, there's some really, serious consequences of cheating. And so COTS is a fantastic conference. I absolutely love it. So I would, recommend anybody involved in test security come to COTS. But yeah, we are really excited this year that in Cambridge we are hosting it for the first time outside of the US. So it's in early November. What we're planning is I think it's on Tuesday the 3rd of November. We've got a drinks reception to welcome everybody. And it's in one of the really nice hotels by the River Cam. And that's where Cambridge comes from. It's the bridge over the River Cam. So we've got a lovely drinks reception planned there. And then on the 4th and the 5th of November at Downing College, we've got We're going to have lots of really good sessions all about test security. The biggest challenge of COTS is how to be in 5 places at once, because of course you want to attend every session. But we will be hosting in Cambridge, in the city, very near the city centre. We'll be providing lots of information to people of where to stay, where to go, what they can do while they're in the city. And I'd say keep your eye out for messages, because we're hoping that soon we'll be able to put out a call for papers for people to submit what they want to present on for COTS. And I would encourage everybody to come to it. And of course, if they can't attend in person, there will be a virtual version of COTS. But for those who can, please come to Cambridge. It's a fun little city, and we look forward to welcoming everybody here.
Thank you, Claire. We are so excited. I think this is such an awesome opportunity to get some more of the exam security practitioners in the EU connected with one another, with other exam security practitioners in other parts of the globe. And obviously, we couldn't do it without the generosity of Cambridge hosting. So thank you again. Also, I think COTS, I completely agree with you in terms of the importance of the conference. And we deliberately try and keep the conference fees as low as we can to try and really encourage, a wide range of folks to attend. And so it really does have folks not only from around the world, but from departments of education, from licensure organizations, from standardized assessment organizations in the K-12 space, to certification and credentialing in the professional markets. So it is definitely, if folks are in the exam security space, it is a conference to put on your calendar, and it's a special one this year. So thank you again. Okay, we are now going to transition to our games. Are you ready?
Yes. Is there a prize?
We
You'll
don't
find
really
out
have
at COTS.
It's bragging rights. So this is a game. It's called You Make the Call. And so what I'm going to do, and Jarret's going to kind of play as well, I'm going to give you guys a scenario, and there's going to have multiple options that you can choose to respond to the scenario, and you are going to make the call about which option you think they should select. Does that make sense?
Should we hit the buzzer, Rach, when we're
yes, you'll have to hit
raise our hand? Okay.
Yeah, what is your buzzer sound, Jarret? Okay. Just so I can describe
It was a pretty bad buzzer.
So what is yours, Claire?
I don't think I have a buzzer sound. I'm just going to yell my answer.
Okay, perfect. All right. But
Perfect.
Jarret, you have to make your buzzer sound. We've heard that now. Okay.
We've done it
So
once. It's good.
question 1. Let's say you have a proctor and they're going around the room, active proctoring, as one should. And they notice that there is a test taker who is just kind of staring off in space, and yet their computer screen itself is advancing and test questions are being answered, even though the test taker and their hands are not actually engaging it. So you make the call. Does your proctor, A, document the situation but let the test taker continue? B, stop the exam and report it? Or C, go the Harry Potter route and assume that it's just magic? What is your answer?
Clearly magic. That's my answer. It's clearly magic.
Good. I mean, we will be close to Harry Potter territory, really. So, especially for COTS. So,
Yes.
I'd go for end the test and
End
then
the
report
test.
it to us so we can investigate, but end the test.
why would you want the proctor to do that, Claire?
I wouldn't want the person to continue cheating on the test. They might be harvesting content that could be up to sort of all sorts of no good. So if we have caught them in the act of cheating, I would prefer to cancel the test there and then report it back to us so that we can investigate further, because we might find links between that person and other test takers who may have cheated, or, it's all part of that intelligence gathering. But if they're definitely cheating, we don't want to let them just carry on.
Yeah, I that would be my preference too, from a policy perspective. And I think it's a situation where, to your point, it's better to kind of end the exam and report what was observed. Maybe have someone else observe it too. But once you get to that point, then just end the exam as opposed to finish it up and then have to do something later. Jarret, would you do anything different?
So actually, I'm really glad that you said something about policy, because I really think it depends on modalities and where you're at. So in a higher ed context, sometimes actually the policy that we have seen there is to document, get a second individual to observe, but actually to allow them to continue and gather as much information through that. A lot of times that's simply because faculty have requested that on that end in the higher ed context. And they'll make the determination individually. But again, it's really important to go back to have those policies so you can go back to those in each case to be able to provide information for that. So, and yeah, definitely, if possible, get a second person to verify cameras on them and see what other kind of connections are going on.
Yeah. Yeah. And we just, we had talked about in an earlier session about proxy testing and how cookies can sometimes be used to undermine some of the cybersecurity protocols that are in place. And that would be a way that you can identify proxy testing is, there's literally a different person just virtually now acting as a proxy and inserting the answers. So, okay, next question. You make the call. There was a recent story with a test taker in India who was found to be talking to themselves during an exam. Now, the proctors had told this person several times to quiet down, stop talking out loud. But eventually, after another outburst, they pulled him out of the room and did a visual inspection. You're going to make the call here. What do you think they found? Did they find A, the test taker had a Bluetooth communication device in their sleeve? B, the test taker had a Bluetooth communication device hiding in a wig? Or C, they had a cell phone hidden in their shirt? Claire.
Interesting. Well, it could be any of those, I guess.
Could be. We actually talked about that.
Yeah, all of the above.
It could be any, all of the above.
He's a very enthusiastic cheater.
Right. This story was the test taker had the Bluetooth device in their wig, and it was underneath their wig. It was using that to communicate. So, but as you said, we've certainly seen the rest. Okay, next one. A proctor reports that they did a visual and clothing inspection before test takers came into the room before the test. Now everybody is seated, but the proctor has heard a cell phone vibrating. Now you make the call. Should the proctor stop everyone from testing, have them leave the room, and undergo another visual inspection? B, continue monitoring to see if anyone attempts to answer or use a cell phone? Or C, wait for the test takers to finish testing and then check them on the way out for an unauthorized cell phone? Claire.
I think this is going to depend. So how many people are in the room and what age group we're looking at as well, and the sort of stakes of the test. But so depending on all the circumstances, one of the options is to gather the test takers who are closest to where they think they heard the phone, take them out of the room and check who has the phone.
Okay. Jarret, would you have a different answer?
Yeah, no, I would agree, and I'd kind of go for a hybrid of I guess B and C. Either if you have the ability, continue to monitor and see if anyone attempts to use it. While it is a violation, we need to be able to see what potentially is going on. But also, I think I would also do a check on the way out and have that conversation. But again, I think it depends on the policy and the context. In a higher ed setting, I think, yeah, I definitely go with B and C, and a high stakes licensure exam, probably change it a little bit.
Yeah, I think a lot of things depend on context, really, don't they?
Yeah.
Because if you've got 100 people in a room or 20 people in a room, it's going to vary. And if they're 14-year-olds, if they're adults, it's just It depends on
Yeah.
a lot of things depend on context, don't they?
Yeah, I think it's nice to go back to what Jarret said, which is every testing program tends to have their own policy, and so the proctor can certainly go back and either review those policies or contact the testing program for guidance on what they would have them do. But it certainly raises interesting questions for us. I think people think proctoring is such an easy job for individuals to engage in, and there really are a lot of important judgment calls that proctors, who are a super important part of test taker experience as well as exam security, there's a lot of judgment calls they have to make. So, all right, Claire, you were awesome. If we had a prize, you would have won it.
Definitely.
Well, I get bragging rights, as you said.
Yes, bragging rights.
Bragging rights it is.
Definitely bragging rights at ATP.
Sounds good.
Give me a hard time about my Harry Potter and magic response. All right, everyone. That brings us to the end of episode 3. And we want to remind all of you that we want to hear from you. As we had mentioned in our earlier segment of a fan of the podcast, colleague had reached out and shared with us the cookie information. So if you have any other ideas or any feedback, we want to hear from you. So send your burning questions to us about cheating, about testing, or about academic integrity to info@cornerstonestrategies.org. That's info, INFO, @cornerstonestrategies, one word, .org. Claire, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Claire. You were wonderful. This has definitely been our Cookies, COTS and Claire episode, and we're so glad you were here.
Thank you very much for having me. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you. And I'll see you at ATP and COTS.
That's right.
And that's a wrap for episode 3. Thanks for joining us for And This Matters Because, and we look forward to speaking with all of you next time.
This episode was hosted by Rachael Shoenig of Cornerstone Strategies and Jarret Dyer of Surpass Assessment. They were joined by guest Claire McCauley from Cambridge Assessment. To get in touch with the podcast, email info@cornerstonestrategies.org.